This is a 1947 CJ2a Jeep. You can call it a Willys or a Willys, depending on your mood. I've been wanting to build one for years. I'm the steward of one that was on my great-grandfather's farm in Pennsylvania. I documented this build in a series of posts on our Model Car Muse Patreon, where patrons get a behind-the-scenes look from my bench. My goal was to replicate the civilian version that would have been delivered from the Toledo factory in 1947. And this is what I started with. This classic Jeep kit. It's a good kit. You can make either the civilian version or the military version. It comes with two grills, but it's not entirely accurate for the era I wanted to replicate. I knew I'd have to do some scratch building, and that's the fun part. The kit comes with two axles. In this kit, they're all plastic. Unlike a lot of the AMT kits that had a metal rod that went through them, that kept the wheels nice and straight. I was worried that over time, if I built it with all plastic axles in the suspension, it would start to sag. I cut out the center of the axle's shaft right through the differential, and I put in brass rod to strengthen the whole setup so it wouldn't warp over time. The kit tires were just too wide to replicate a stock 1947 Jeep. So I found some resin tires that replicated the look perfectly, that military tread that they had on some of the early Jeeps coming out of the factory. I had to really fine-tune the shape of the wheels. I started with the outer rim for the kit and the very center plate where the lug nuts go. And then I machined the part that goes in between. I assembled that into one piece. I made a mold. Then I could replicate as many as I want. And then I'd have one for the spare tire. For the spare tire, I knew that would be a fragile part. So I attached it with a magnet on the back. The idea being, if I transport it to a show, I can take it off and I don't have to worry about whatever that connection is breaking. And then when I get there, I can just snap it on. I had to make some modifications to the body. Really, it was just cleanup. The military Jeeps came with a tool mount for the side. There were indents in the body. I filled those in so it was smooth. It was on some of the civilian Jeeps, but I wanted this one to be the newer smooth side panel version. The other bit I had to add was the D-shaped indent for the fuel filler cap. I had to cut that out, get a parts box cap, set that in there. When you have a Jeep like this and you pull up to the pump at the gas station, you can actually just sit there in the driver's seat and reach out, get the pump gizmo, and just put it right into the tank and fill up without getting out of your seat. Jeep guys like that. I also put magnets on the tailgate so that when you close it, it stays shut, pulls itself into position. Then when it's open, it has straps to hold it in place. I replicated the hood. I wanted it to be super thin and not a bit of thick plastic. The leading edge on this on a real Jeep is 1/4 of an inch. I used brass so it's nice and thin. For the center piece in the center of the hood where it gets spot welded together, I stood a thin piece of brass on end and glued it in place. I like working in brass because this is a very stable part. There's a lot of plastic that over time may shift and get a slight warp to it or a new attitude. This brass is going to be like this forever, nice and stable, so I know it's always going to fit on there perfectly. I cleaned up the grille in the kit, put on the nice chrome headlight rings, and got the marker lights fabricated. I'm glad to be able to share my ideas with you through our videos. One of the things that makes this channel possible is the ongoing support of viewers who become patrons. As a thank you for their patronage, we publish brief posts from my bench on our Patreon page exclusively for patrons. If you'd like to help further the work we do here on Model Car Muse, check out the Patreon link in the description below. I wanted to replicate the factory color. This is Normandy blue with orange wheels. You can see on the outside of the hood, there's a nice gloss. On the inside, it's a little bit of overspray and matte finish. This was enamel paint that was applied very quickly at the factory. I mean, I imagine the painters who were used to spraying on olive drab for years, and now they were spraying on a gloss paint and trying to make a nice finish. So I wanted a clean look, but not quite perfect. I wanted it to look like a 1968 Sears Craftsman wheelbarrow, kind of some quickly applied enamel paint. I painted this 4 times to get it the way I wanted. I had help from Jamestown Croon. It's scale finishes. The paint color is a perfect match. After 4 tries, I'm really happy with the way it came out. It's just got a little bit of that crazy funkiness that you'd expect on enamel paint. The paint is perfectly imperfect. As simple as it might seem, there's a lot of work that went into the interior. The dashboard, I started with a clean slate. I just sanded it smooth. I added the gauges, which I photo reduced. I put little rings around them and a touch of glass. I used some clear plastic across those. I put the data plates and the instruction plates for on how the 4-wheel drive works. Scratch built the shift levers. I started with the kit seats, but I added some padding to them to help them bulge out so they didn't look too flat. I covered those with masking tape. I did a lot of research and I found a masking tape that I felt replicated that stock seat covering. I got little imperfections and wrinkles in the fabric, which is just how it came from the factory. The kit came with the ability for the windshield to fold up or down. The really crazy thing is the windshield wipers. On the passenger side, the windshield wiper is a blade, of course, on the outside to clean the glass, but on the inside it's attached to a lever that's operated manually. So that's the responsibility of the passenger or a driver with a long arm. On the driver's side, it's a vacuum wiper, which means that from that center point where it pivots, a hose has to run all the way down to the engine to create that vacuum. And I have that replicated, and that's part of the pivot. It runs all the way down through there and into the engine compartment. I replicated every single wire and hose in the engine compartment. Hyper realistic. And I used the repair manuals and the diagrams in there, as well as photographs for reference. It's amazing that such a simple engine ends up with such a tight engine compartment with so much going on. Knowing that this was going to be viewed from the top, I wanted to make sure that the detail on the cylinder head was perfect. It's right up in front. So I cleaned the cylinder head from the kit of all the nuts and bolts. I then made out of resin, I know I can buy them, my own nuts to go on the top, laid them out. I also did scratch building and using some existing purchased nuts to create spark plugs. I ran wiring to the distributor, which is buried down in there pretty deep. I also did some really great wiring to the generator, which is then covered up with an oil filter so you can't really see it, but it was fun doing it. That's why I did it. I have decals that I made for the voltage regulator, the oil filter, some of the other bits that go on the engine, information-wise like that. I wanted the pulley assembly to look accurate because it's visible from the top of the engine. I started with the belt that was a kit part, cleaned that up, and then added discs to either side to simulate the pulleys. To give them more separation, the belt itself is a matte black and the pulleys are a gloss black. It really gives you an idea of the two different parts that are like right next to each other. And that was a key thing on this build. A lot of the parts in the engine and the chassis are black. Some are gloss black, some are matte black, some are semi-gloss in between. So I used not only different sheens or reflectivity of black paint, I used different brands. So you got a real good sense of all the different blacks that were there. Kind of separated everything into different levels. To replicate the raised lettering that's stamped in the Jeep panels, I went to my full-size Jeep, I traced them, I scanned the tracing, I cleaned it up in the computer, and I sent it off to STS and I had them make decals. They did a great job with a very nice opaque white with very crisp edges. Very happy with the way they turned out. And they're on both sides of the hood, they're on the front of the windshield frame, they're also on the tailgate. On the chassis, I replicated the exhaust by making a muffler. I machined it on the lathe to get just the right shape. I ran new pipes that I made out of brass and plastic and copper to show the configuration of a 47 civilian exhaust system. I made a skid plate out of brass, then did the one thing that really, I think, complements the Jeep really well, and anyone that owns a Jeep like this will understand. There is one small dot of oil right below the transfer case, which is pretty typical on a Jeep. Just a dot of oil hanging down. Because all my CJ2a buddies know, if it's not dripping, the transfer case must be empty. For me, it wouldn't be complete without a 1947 license plate. I photographed a real one, the family heirloom. I reduced it down in size, glued it on. I used bits of photo etch to replicate the data plates. One goes on the side of the frame, 2 others go in the firewall. They contain the serial number and other important information. Well, after all these years, I finally got it out of my system. I finally built a Jeep model I'm happy with.